Like, I'm not pretending that everyone is obsessed with health and wellness and everyone's cutting out sugar, please. Like, everyone likes sugar, so good luck cutting it out. I do think, though, that it's good when the popular lifestyle and what's fundamentally good align.
Back to the Fitt Insider podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Derek Flanzraich, founder and CEO of Ness. In this episode, we discuss the company's rewards platform and wellness credit card. Derek shares lessons learned from founding and selling Greatist, a health-focused media company. Plus, we talk about misaligned healthcare incentives and how Ness plans to address them. Let's get into it. Hi, Derek. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. Good to catch up. A lot to chat about. Obviously, I've been following along and, small, teeny tiny part back in the day when it was Greatist. So obviously known you and your work for quite some time, but for folks who aren't familiar, maybe a quick intro and tell us now about what you're working on at Ness.
Sure. So we know each other from my last startup in Greatist. 6 months out of college, started Greatist. I grew up the biggest kid in the class, struggling with my weight and feeling like all the brands that were out there were for people who had six-pack abs already and Gwyneth Paltrow, or frankly were trying to take advantage of people who didn't and weren't. And it felt like there was something in between, just kind of meeting people where they were at and empowering them to improve and celebrating them when they got a little bit better. And so I became sort of obsessed with who's going to build a brand that effectively talks about health in a healthier way. Now, over 10 years ago, we started writing with some friends, some very helpful contributing writers, such as yourself. We started writing fact-checked, expert-approved content. Still believe it to be the best quality content in the space. But it was all written in the voice of a friend that was a little further along. And as you know better than most, we ended up building the largest site on the internet for millennials who care about their health. We did a lot of things wrong, but we did the content part really right. And ended up building this, 50 million people every month reading our content, 2 million people on an email list we emailed every single day. It was pretty crazy. And I got my first sort of front seat experience on a roller coaster ride that is a startup, and got to spend 10 years kind of in the middle of this growing ecosystem of health and wellness and learn about how to build a brand and a business and a team and a culture. I'm very grateful for that experience. We sold the company in 2019 to Healthline, the largest health site on the internet. Most of my senior leadership team at Greatist is now running Healthline, which is pretty cool. And Greatist lives on. But I'll be frank, I came away from the experience pretty hungry for more. I felt disappointed, I'll be honest. We had by all measures was a success, but we built a media company. We sold it for a nice multiple. Had nearly 100 full-time people. And it wasn't an amazing business, but it was a big and growing one. And I look back on the experience with a lot of pride. And I think the role we played in the mainstreamification of health and wellness early on, sort of shaping the narrative for the better. But I definitely felt like this was just my first swing. And so here I am taking my second big swing.
No, it's awesome. I think that setting the foundation for, not only going through the startup experience and so many times, especially like you said, straight out of college and getting into that and figuring it out and the better part of 10 years doing it. And then, I think a small handful, but there are a group of founders who get to that place and they got a W, but it doesn't feel maybe the way that they thought it would, or maybe they didn't achieve all the things that they wanted to. But I think much in my personal experience as well, it's it's always been around how do we help people live a healthier lifestyle? How do we redefine health? How do we make it more accessible? How do we make it, I think in a lot of ways what you did at Greatist and now continue to do is how do we make it approachable and not this thing that feels far off or for a certain type of person? And so I think it lays the groundwork really nicely for getting back in the ring, right? But still very much in that kind of same path of increasing access and awareness to health and wellness. So yeah, as it relates to Ness, like, well, what is it? But then also, like, how did you make that jump from,
Yeah, totally.
selling this company to now getting back into it?
Yeah, and I think like fundamentally, right, I feel very blessed that early on in my life I like realized why I'm like on this planet. Like I felt like there was this moment as I was struggling with my health and wellness personally, but also becoming sort of, passionate about it personally and professionally increasingly, that I became kind of convinced that I was here to like democratize access, right? And at Greatist, we got to do that, not to get all like philosophical or frankly overstate what we did at Greatist, which again, I'm very proud of that experience. And I do think it was early and made it like, I think the brand we built was really valuable and important as a part of the like overall story of health and wellness at the time. But like for sure, like making things more accessible, friendlier and accessible is in theory really important. But in reality, there's just no denying. And this is what I kept coming back to as I was starting to think on what that getting in the ring looks like. What is that next sort of at bat? And there's just no denying that it's too expensive for most people. Like it's just hard to afford so many parts of living healthy. Why is that? And so about like a year and a half or so I spent about a year and a half in between companies working as an advisor and a consultant. I did some investing in a bunch of different health and primarily, frankly, like healthcare companies that were consumerizing in some way, and got a front row seat at some amazing companies like a GoodRx or a Galileo Health or Elo Health, which I know you did a recent podcast with Ari, with Peloton, like a lot of companies basically. And I started to think a lot about healthcare and how like that should play some role in this making things more affordable. At the time, I was really mad that health insurance wouldn't pay for me to see a therapist. And I didn't get why health insurance wouldn't. I had this therapist I liked, and it like refused. I couldn't figure out any way to get this insurance I was on to reimburse me for this therapist. I felt so strange during COVID that would be the case. And so I started to look into why it was that health insurance seemingly rarely actually pays for the things that people both increasingly want, but also experts agree are good for you. Eating well and working out and taking vitamin D and mental health. Like that's this is like, these are not controversial things, like this is like everyone agrees that if society was doing it, we'd be so much better off. However, health insurance like basically like doesn't reimburse you for any of that usually. So me and some friends, some former sort of investors and backers of Greatist, some mentors, started to explore why that was. And what we learned was actually something pretty surprising. I think that effectively the majority of people in this country, unlike any other country in the world, essentially get health insurance from their employer. That is a weird, there's a weird kind of history for why that ended up being. But today, people stay with employers for such a shorter period of time. It's never effectively been shorter. And so, from the health insurance plan's perspective, if I know you're just going to be on my plan for 3 to 4 years while you have a job with your current company, but then you're going to switch to another company and probably end up on a competitor plan in the same area, what's the incentive for me to reimburse you for your gym membership or pay for your healthy food? By the time any of it makes any difference, you're on a competitor plan. It's almost like gifting money to the competition. So to me, it's like this like misaligned incentives in this space are effectively like at the core, like the core fundamental issue, I think, actually in the system. If you could fix those incentives, and we started getting more and more excited about this idea. If you could effectively fix those incentives for the better, you could align them so that health insurance stuck with you long enough that it could actually justify investing in your long-term health. Well, you could actually wean the system off this employer first model and actually justify like reimbursing and bringing the cost down in the process of all of these things that are good for you. And so we became obsessed, just like I was kind of like, at Greatist, with the same, like, how do you end up building something like this? And for us, that meant trying to find a model, a form factor that we could maintain a longer term relationship with you on. It turns out that in this country, never have more people had a choice of where they get their health insurance from. That, is shifting. And I would bet on that trend continuing. Part of the reason is that employer costs for healthcare have like grown so tremendously, and even the employees themselves are paying so much out of pocket often for a good plan that it just feels like unfeasible. Like it just doesn't feel like that's going to last. So more and more employers have actually turned to ICRAs and QSARAs and effectively like pre-tax solutions, or using like give dollars to your employees to pick whatever plan they want, typically on the open exchange. There's never been more self-employed and freelance folks. There's actually never been more people in this country who are uninsured but like totally eligible, not for Medicare or Medicaid, but like to get health insurance. We think there's a big opportunity to build some things for people who have a choice, and we think more people will have a choice in the future. So what do you choose? And so that's how we landed on this kind of unique wedge that is Ness, which is a credit card. And in fact, we got so excited about credit cards that we're now building a credit card company. And effectively, the vision is to build an Amex for health with a full suite of consumer credit cards, and to build actually health insurance as an option on top. So imagine you don't get health insurance anymore from your employer. You actually get it from your credit card. And you opt into your health insurance. And this health insurance is actually more affordable, reimburses you for the things that you really care about. And the reason it can afford all that, and that makes any sense, is because you're going to stay with this credit card world, this platform, for the next 30 to 40 years of your life. And as long as you continue having a choice where you get your health insurance from, the incentives are fully aligned. So that's the kind of the long-term vision is to completely shift the system as we currently understand it, to wean sort of everyone off this employer-sponsored health insurance. It's very possible that employers will just continue to embrace the ICRA and other pre-tax solutions, and actually the employer will help you pay for your health insurance that you get on your Ness card. But to actually effectively build a true consumer-first solution that actually has those aligning incentives in this terribly misaligned space for the first time with consumers. So that's the kind of big, crazy vision at Ness.
And that's the punchline, right? Like it's almost insane and mind-boggling as you start to dig into it, how misaligned the whole thing is. Very few people from the plan to the provider, the payer, the individual members of that, like nobody's actually super happy with how things are going. The employer, like we're just all we're looking around and being like, well, if we blow this part up, then we have to do this, then this piece comes down, then we have to do that. And like, are all those people just going to unwind everything that they've been doing down this, totally misaligned path? It continues to get worse and worse and worse instead of getting better and better and better over time. So it's like now, and it's exciting to see the kind of various approaches that are saying like, we basically have to start from the ground up and figure out an entirely new way to do this, which, as you talked about it very succinctly, is like a huge opportunity and hugely rewarding and game changing in terms of improving health, but also pretty hard, right? Like in terms of how we go about doing that, right? Massive understatement. So
yeah, I mean, I think essentially, right, I came to the conclusion that the current system is incredibly hard to disrupt, because at the end of the day, no matter how well-meaning people at these health plans and payers might be, and I think often actually they really are, and they do have pressure from the employers and from, what's effectively their consumer, not that they sell to them in normal people. They do have pressure to start paying for some of these things, which is why some of them pay for it, right? Like it's good to do it. The problem is they're not financially motivated to care. And I believe that the incentives and the financial motivations, I've actually always believed essentially at the importance of aligning incentives, whether it's for your company and your employees, how do you align mutually on the mission that you're on, which is a crazy thing we do at Ness, and then I started doing at Greatist, where we have professional development as a focus, or whether you're talking about the business you're actually building, this idea that what if you could actually just align these incentives? And I believe the only way you can do that actually is through what we think of effectively as this Trojan horse, right? And we're very open about it, right? We're very clear about it. And look, we'll probably end up working with the existing health plans, who are we kidding? But at least as the beginning, right, of where we're going. But this idea sort of can you use consumers as like a wedge, a consumer first solution as a wedge into the space? I'm actually personally convinced that's the only way that real profound change could be made, is people demanding actually to go with these other options. And if we're right about that, we'll be really, really right. And if we're wrong, well, they'll be really wrong too. you know, we have gotten very excited about credit card as a form factor, just to we considered a lot of them, mostly because of the power, the opportunity to actually earn your way into the consumer wallet. That allows you to actually drive like better behavior and better behavior change. If we can incentivize and reward you for spending on the right stuff and even help you like figure out what better stuff you could be spending on, that's very powerful too. And the more you can reduce the cost through rewards or through discounts or through good deals, also the more people can access these solutions. And so there's a lot of good fundamentally with just this credit card solution. And our user research came away pretty conclusively that we believe today's primary lifestyle identity is no longer travel, which most kind of premium cards are based on, but that it's health and wellness. And if that's true, what better moment in time to actually build a health and wellness first, credit card company? So we're very excited about just that as like the foundational element of what we hope will eventually become this like very unique and powerful wedge into the healthcare space.
Yeah, I do. I want to talk more about the wedge and kind of where it is now and how that expands.
Yeah.
But I think that it's worth calling out what you just said in terms of when you think about Amex and the profile of that business person, right? That's traveling on the plane and eating out and dining, and that being the foundation for like the huge kind of financial institution, credit card industry in so many ways, and then all the perks and platform tied to that. And now recognizing that kind of persona shift, that lifestyle shift, and the number of people who feel like, in many ways, like they're piecing all these things together around this lifestyle themselves.
Yeah.
And they're not getting any type of reward, least of all from health insurance, any type of discount, rebate,
Yeah.
premium.
I mean, there's a few, but yeah, I mean, basically no, right? Again, and there's a reason for that, right? That they're not motivated to do that. Yeah, I mean, I think the persona has shifted, and I'm definitely right about that. That's definitely true. Businesses like yours, even like Greatist, couldn't have existed 20 years ago, and we are in a different era. We've got a long way to go too, right? Like, I'm not pretending that everyone is obsessed with health and wellness and everyone's cutting out sugar. Please, like, everyone likes sugar, so good luck cutting it out. Like, I do think though that it's good when like the popular lifestyle and what's fundamentally good align, right? And so I think that's all very positive, and I think it's trending in a positive direction. And I definitely think people haven't caught up to it yet. Amex and Chase, where the points you earn effectively you can use, the place you use them are effectively like on a travel portal and a platform, right? Like, that's what you use the points for. Imagine, this is of course what we're working on, but imagine if you could use your points not towards that. People have this idea that they're saving up for this beautiful trip to Tahiti, when in reality, they end up using their points to get 50% off their trip to Detroit. There's definitely people feel increasingly, I think, frustrated with the real value they're getting. Imagine if you could actually use those points to get a massage every month, or to see a therapist or a health coach every month. Imagine you can use that to, reduce the cost of your, gym or your food, healthy food that you're buying. We built all that effectively, and that'll all be live, by the end of the year to people who have our card. And what a different world for the points that you're earning. You can use them in a way you can use them more often on things that actually make a direct difference and are still aspirational and self-indulgent in nature, frankly, and also good for you. And I like travel. Nothing against travel. People still use their travel cards. We just want all the other spend because we think it'll be the best bang for our buck, best bang for your buck, right? The consumer's buck, if you use our platform. So
yeah, in terms of where that wedge is now and what the experience is like for the users as they come on board, and then partners initially is you're onboarding them as well. What is that kind of short-term value proposition? You talked about it a little bit there, but then getting to those next milestones, do you have a sense for like what are the inflection points that then say, oh, we can go from this rewards to using it for a massage to getting to a place where it is down that healthcare path?
Totally. So a few months ago, we launched what was meant as like an experiment, this rewards app that basically syncs with existing credit cards and gives you points when you spend on anything healthy. It was mostly a way for us to learn about who our target customer was and what they were spending on. And we also wanted to build out our merchant database. There's no like what's healthy database out there. And so this allowed people to say request points for certain things. And in the process, we've actually built like I think it's 15, 20,000, healthy merchant database of like very unique data, right? Like, what are all the smoothie and juice places near you, but also like, every category of health. And so it just turned out that this like really resonated with people more than we expected. Look, like of course getting like more points on stuff, like it's a free app and you basically like connect your card. But we've got it's invite only. We've got a little under 3,500 people using it right now. They've spent over I think it's nearly $45 million already in the app, like active spend. 15 to 18% of that is on healthy transactions. And we've got 40,000 people on a wait list just to get into this app. So it's just been a big success and way more popular than we thought. And like, frankly, like don't know what to do with all these people and like how to roll them off. Like we've started to roll some people off the wait list, but like we weren't anticipating that much interest. And we have all these brands that then we're like, you basically connect your cards, get your points, and then you can use those points. Today it's just on gift cards. We started to surface some of our providers as well. So like you can see a health coach for 2,000 points or whatever. It's been amazing to see like what brands people redeem on and what brands they're less interested in, and Sweet Green and some of the ones you'd think are very popular, but also like a brand called Hara or a brand called Peak right now is doing really well. So, we're like learning which like health and wellness brands resonate. How can we drive people to discover also new brands that they're interested in? So that's kind of like step one. Step one is this rewards app. It's gone better than we expected. And it's been, really fun, frankly, to like have people using a product, giving you feedback and being able to build in some ways the front end experience that will eventually become our credit card, like live, Then our first card comes out at the end of this year. We still aren't sharing all the details, but it's going to be a high premium fee card. It'll come with thousands of dollars in benefits from brands everyone's heard of, some pretty like out there multiples on their spend, right? Like if you spend on health and wellness or healthcare, right now it's 6x back, 2.5x on everything else. I don't think we've shared that anywhere, and it could change, but like essentially that's like what we've got penciled in for now. But pretty unparalleled sort of like spending rewards. And the reason is because our market of health and wellness is meaningfully better and has higher margins than travel effectively, right? So we can negotiate amazing deals with these brand partner friends of ours and drive a lot of the value back to the consumer. Like effectively, we're taking a lot of the acquisition costs that these brands are spending, and we're just returning it back to the consumer in a really kind of cool, unique way. So that card comes out at the end of this year. It'll come out right after the holidays in time for January. We think of that card as sort of our Tesla Roadster, right? It'll be a premium card. The vision for the business is ultimately to build a world where everyone can afford to be healthy. And so the intention is very much to launch other cards at more increasingly accessible price points into the future. So the expectation is first card out at the end of this year. We hope to get our second card out by the end of next year, which will come at a lower cost. And we hope to start offering a health insurance or health insurance-like solution on top of both of those cards starting in 2024, basically in time for like open enrollment is the idea at the end of next year. So in like a year from now. And so that's the short-term plan. And then obviously we want a full suite of cards. Eventually we'll, there's we have a lot of ambitions around where we want to go. But that's kind of the timeline, at least for the next year or so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. And like you said, obviously coming from startup world that year, 2 year plan will happen very quickly and ultimately happens
And
in what
exactly as we planned it, of course.
in week and month long sprints. So all of that constant kind of evolution, chasing those down. But to the extent that you know now or thinking about it, you mentioned earlier, like, hey, we will probably end up partnering with some of these health plans. When you say introducing this kind of product for open enrollment, that in partnership with somebody? Is that kind of like co-branded? How do you think about it?
That's the expectation, yeah. As in the beginning, it'll probably be in partnership with, health plans. We'll build a solution kind of for our, to our existing customer base and or wrap around existing solutions in unique ways where we can offer certain health benefits. It'll take some time for us to prove that not only is our audience, not only are consumers and customers credit worthy and relatively healthier than average, but also that they're willing to stick on our platform for a long period of time. Because that's the like belief, right? Like we picked credit cards because people actually stick to them for a, 3, 4 times longer than the average health insurance plan. Like, and some people stick with their credit cards for, I mean, people stay on the Amex or Chase platform for 20, 30, 40 years. So that's our goal. And so if we can get there, then we can do the actuarial math pretty easily. We have some learning to do, right, around how people engage and stick with our solution. But yeah, so that probably in the beginning we'll end up partnering, and then in the future, who knows where it goes.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I wanted to, as we get towards the end of the conversation, like one thing that I think you're probably pretty dialed in on, given what you're working on at Ness. It seems like to this point, the innovation around linking some of the credit card, financial institution, fintech, just in general, has been more down the path of like life insurance. And there's obviously, in terms of policy, like you can incentivize people to be healthier and reward them, and their premiums are different or better, and all those sorts of things. And of course, with healthcare, at least as it stands right now, it's like when they say you can't discriminate on the basis of health, they mean for better or for worse. Like, so for me being healthy, that actually they can't give me a better premium because that would be discriminating based on my health status. Is there any thought to say, we could go that life insurance route as we're thinking about reinventing healthcare? And or is it purely like take some learnings from that, what has existed to this point around that kind of rewards and incentives, and say like, no, ultimately, like we want to reinvent healthcare, and that's kind of, at least for the foreseeable future, the path that you're headed down?
I'm like, yeah, not tremendously passionate about life insurance. And I'm definitely not more passionate about getting like giving slight discounts on life insurance to people that are healthier. That feels very unfulfilling to me. It's probably, frankly, a good business, but it's not like the business. I'm much more interested in like rebuilding the defining brand, the brand that kind of redefines people's relationship with their health, that actually drives them to take more healthy actions, reduces the cost along the way so they can take more of them, and opens that up to everybody, not just the people who already can afford, the Peloton and the Aura Ring. That's what's exciting to me. And look, not every founder is the same. You talk to a lot of CEOs and executives who run health and wellness companies. Mostly in the health and wellness space, I think the founders and CEOs and folks like tend to have some personal relation to what they're building. But I am definitely like a mission first, value first, like vision first, like CEO. I believe I'm on this planet to make this difference. And so I find life insurance very unexciting, but I find health insurance a much thornier issue, but also an issue that if you could, really start making a difference in, also just enters a completely different category of the kind of size of the business you can build, both in terms of impact, but also in terms of financial size, right? If we can really become, even at worst, a new acquisition engine for health plans, that's a big business. And if we can actually become or partner with the health plans themselves in a way that actually, improves the offering to reimburse people for the things they're increasingly wanting, at a lower cost than other plans because they're actually utilizing them, you kind of change everything, right? We in this country, it's absurd how expensive health and wellness things are. And it's frustrating that corn is subsidized and, candy and soda are still so cheap. That should be frustrating to everyone who understands this space and who is going to do something about it. So that's what I'm passionate about, is trying to do something about it. I think the credit card business, if done right, we can drive a lot more value back to the consumer and drive, really meaningful, healthy decisions and actions at scale in a really cool, exciting way. I think that's a very compelling business on its own, but we're doing this for a larger purpose.
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-to-one comparison, but maybe an interesting anecdote to your kind of Trojan horse comparison. I talked to the CEO of Noom on the podcast, and they'd been at it, they have their criticism and whatever around diet culture and, building a startup versus, a company that helps with nutrition and weight loss, but they've been at it for 15 plus years at this point. And he said basically, like, all along the way, they tried to work with the health plans, especially at the onset. And then they just said, like, well, look, we'll figure that out later. If we can get to a critical mass around people who are trying to improve their health and wellness, like, then we'll circle back to that once it's like basically too big. It can't be ignored. Right. Like, so we'll figure out what that integration is like down the road. But if we provide that value up front, like, you know, great. Well, let's focus on doing that. And so like the outcome,
Yeah.
kind of takes care of itself in some ways. So I think it's
It's
interesting to think.
yeah, it's so funny. So Seiju is an old friend and actually an investor in Ness, the CEO of Noom and founder. And I think of him as a mentor. I respect him tremendously. He and I started companies at loosely the same time, Greatist and Noom. And I think at various times, I definitely wanted the business to be like the Weight Watchers of the future. And so we started building an audience first, and we're planning to get to that. And I think he in many stages kind of wanted to be Greatist, right? Have this big educational reach and an audience. And at various times we would hire people away from each other. And look, time will tell. Clearly, he's built an unbelievable business, and I respect him a lot and learn from him regularly. But it's funny how I do think all these things in health and healthcare actually take a long time. I spent 8 years building Greatist, and that's a lot longer than your average first time founder, builds a business. And I do think these things take time. And I also think if you can actually capture consumers, if you can truly build a real relationship, I talk about content, I always think about, because people think of me as sort of the content strategy piece. We were talking about that earlier, but content, I think, is the most cost effective way to start a relationship with people still today. But how do you deepen and build a real relationship that goes further with that? And if you can build that deep relationship, I think there's a lot of ways to monetize it, in a way that doesn't compromise on your audience. That was my biggest frustration, frankly, at Greatist, was the way we made money effectively was selling eyeballs, and getting brands and sponsors in front of people. And that felt at odds with kind of our overall mission and vision. Whereas with this business, feels just the opposite, right? Here we are, it's so super aligned, right? If you're only going to use this card and spend on it if it's driving you value, and if we can drive you to make better and more decisions that are good for you, everyone wins effectively, which is really cool. And then yes, I think in the end, if you can really capture the consumers, there's a lot of ways to monetize that and a lot of partners down the line. But consumer is really hard too. We spent a year building the the infrastructure for a credit card company, the Tesla Roadster. You first have to build the Gigafactory, the Tesla experience, every part and how it fits together. So it feels like we've done that the hard way the last year with an unbelievable team, by the way, of people who are way better than I deserve to have brought on board and to partner with me. But yeah, that infrastructure we think will pay off long term, but it's hard to take a big bet like that we hope will start paying off very soon. But it takes time to build that, consumer audience and that relationship with them. But that really is, I think, the most valuable thing in probably period, but especially in health, is a real relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Well on the way, and now starting to be able to roll some of those out and get people off the wait list. As we wrap up, it's like talked about a lot, right? And certainly laying the groundwork for that mission that you've been working on for well over a decade at this point. Talk about, getting ready to roll out the credit card, building out that wait list and getting people into the rewards app.
By the way, we just got this. Just got this. This is a prototype of our first. It won't look exactly like this, but like first time, like feeling and touching it. It's pretty exciting. Like, yeah, it's fun, and it's like a thing that people can interact with, which is neat. Anyway, yeah, it's an exciting next few months for us.
Yeah, and we talk about, how important that relationship is and building that relationship with consumers. For folks that are listening, what should they be looking out for in the near term, or maybe what's the best way to engage as you continue to roll out the different products and continue on down this path?
I mean, for Ness, sign up for a wait list. Go to nesswell.com. The company's called Nesswell, kind of wellness backwards, genius. We like Ness because it is finding your way. Like wellness is a journey, and we're helping you find like your way down the path, guiding you and inspiring you and celebrating you as you make your way. And also we're at nesswell.com. So go over there and sign up for the wait list. And then, sign up for our email. We have an amazing email that comes out twice a week that shares sort of the best in health and wellness that's affordable and accessible, sort of like effectively like an anti-goop, like for lack of a better description, but sort of like sharing what's going on. Again, health and wellness products and services. It's called Nessie Sightings. That's at thenessie.com. We'll make a lot of noise, so people will just keep an eye out for Ness, and kind of game time is in the next couple months. But it's been fun. Being a second time founder is very different than being a first time founder, and especially when you're taking a swing like this. And so hopefully, I've never been more confident we'll be taking a hell of a swing. So
it's awesome. It's awesome to hear and kind of catch up. And of course, I hope folks encourage them as well to go check out the site, sign up, stay tuned, but we'll keep them posted as well. So
yeah. Follow Fitt Insider. That's the real answer.
For sure. We'll make sure no update gets missed as they
yeah.
but
That's
appreciate
very
you
kind.
making some time today, and for sure excited to share this conversation.
Yeah, thanks. Really fun to catch up, Joe. Thanks for the time.